We do have live streaming today for this meeting. You can find the link on our webpage under Find It Fast, or going directly to www.ysd7.org/board meetings. There is no public comment on our agenda today. We have public comment options during our business meetings, only which are held on the third Tuesday of the month. If you're interested in past meetings, you can find a link on our webpage to the YSD YouTube channel to view past meetings that were recorded and posted there. And now, Barb, will you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett,
Here.
Director Rice,
Here.
Vice President Villanueva,
Here.
President Walker,
Here.
and Director Navarro Jr. is excused. And President Walker, I gave you incorrect information on the public comment. We have slots for 2 of them at our meeting tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I stand corrected. Do we have any registrations for public comment so far today? Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, we have our Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a student from Eisenhower High School who will be introduced by Principal Eric Danner.
Thank you, President Walker. President Walker, Board Directors, and Superintendent Green. It's my honor to introduce our ASB Senior Class President, Olivia Rankin.
Good afternoon. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Norm, could you pass that down to Graciela?
Oh, okay. January's character word, inquisitive, given to examination or investigation, inclined to ask questions. Hi. Apparently, I'm going to be asked questions, so I'm very prepared.
Board, so.
I'm excited.
First of all, we'd like to thank you, and then I'll turn it over to board members if they have any questions for you. So start maybe with Martha.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I saw you kind of dancing in today. Can you explain that?
Oh, I'm just a very antsy person. Anybody who knows me will notice that I'm always like doing a little dance or, a little jig to get my wiggles out. But
Was there a special reason that you were getting your wiggles out?
oh, I was a little nervous. I always do before I speak, but
That's not what I'm trying to get you to say.
just because it's a great day.
What happened today?
Oh, yeah. Today was the last day of our first semester, the last first semester I'll ever have in high school. So that's very exciting.
This will be a year of the last firsts, or the
Yeah.
first lasts.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Enjoy every one of them.
Thank you. I am.
We look forward to seeing you across the stage in June.
Thank you. I'll be getting my wiggles out then, too.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you so much for being here. I really love the energy that you bring, so always feel free to dance around and get your wiggles out. Thank you so much for being here, and good luck in your final year of high school.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Maybe I'm a tiny bit more pragmatic, but last year at one of our graduations, 2 students were getting their wiggles out and they hit the floor in front of me as we were shaking hands. So I'll just say be cautious with that in those spaces where cameras are looking down. We're very proud of you. We thank you for being here, and we're really looking forward to celebrating you when you graduate. So
Thank you
thanks.
so much. I'll try not to fall.
Thank you.
No promises, though. I'm pretty clumsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll be practicing.
So again, Olivia, thanks again for joining us today and taking out your special time. You're welcome to stay for the meeting if you're interested in learning about a little bit about civics or local government, but I'm sure you have other things you might want to be doing, so you are also free to go. But
Thank you so much. I do have a few things to wrap up and a book that's waiting for me, but I appreciate you guys inviting me here today. Have a great meeting, and have a great rest of your week.
yeah, thank you. And now we will have some Yakima students presenting the Yakima Land Acknowledgement.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation.
The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres.
Across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Kitikat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor the Native people who are tied to the land through history, legends, and cultures. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect.
And a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture.
It also honors the truth.
As a school district, we'll continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Yeah, thank you. And now we will entertain a report from our operations of our transportation department. Dr. Green or Ms. Locke, would you like to introduce our guests?
I will pass this in just a moment to Assistant Superintendent Locke. I simply want to say how excited I am to hear from our presentation here today. When we talk about transportation, for the majority of our students, or a large number of our students, the first individuals that they see every day are our drivers, and that's something that's very significant. So I don't want to steal any thunder, so I'll pass the rest of the time over to Stacy for the introduction.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. Good afternoon, President Walker and Board of Directors, and thank you for having us here today. I would like to start with the first couple slides to talk about our session outcomes. We are going to be connecting the applicable pillars of the strategic plan in the work we do with transportation. We'd also like you to have an opportunity to gain an understanding of the transportation system and its approach to a collaborative environment. You're also going to have the opportunity to view operating resources, the asset processes, and the capabilities that we now have in place over in transportation. And then Art and Rich are going to take a minute and identify some of the key accomplishments that we've had in our district leadership in transportation. Go ahead, Art. Before we do that, we'd like to identify where we align with the strategic plan. We are identified in 4 different areas, or 3 different areas of the pillars, in that we're in this together, we invest in people, and we bring the pieces together. So when we look at, go ahead, Art. When we look at transportation as a whole, transportation is a component of operations. It integrates with health and wellness, enrollment, student records, child nutrition, technology services, safety and security, and athletics and facilities. And we understand in transportation that the entire Yakima School District needs to operate as a whole in order to ensure success for our students so that they become an integral part and member of our society. So when we look at operations, there are some key approaches that we have within this system that involves these 6 different departments. First of all, we subscribe to system thinking that puts the decisions of the entire school district before the sum of the individual departments. So we concentrate on how those departments are going to work together through collaborative interactions. We see the district as a complex composition, many different interconnected parts. And again, we need to work together. We all need to work together to function as a whole to be successful. And this will, in the end, enhance our ability to greatly serve our students and families. So with an overview of operations, of which transportation is a component, I will turn the rest of the presentation over to Art Rodriguez, Director of Transportation, and Rich Porter, Assistant Director of Transportation. Gentlemen.
Well, thank you, President Walker and the Board of Directors for inviting us to present today. When we started this, this presentation, we wanted to start with our data from 21-22, our STARS reporting data, to give you a glimpse of what has happened in transportation over the last year and a half. And our STARS report's done every fall of the school year, and it's providing information from majority of it's from the previous year totals. So in starting in our data, we're looking at, we had 51 routes in the 21-22 school year. And those routes accumulated 430,000 miles for the year for doing to and from school. Along with our routes, interesting point of data is we calculate the number of wheelchairs that we have within our special service fleet. And we had 33 students that we serviced in wheelchairs with our special services buses. The other piece that we look at when we look at data is we collect the number of miles for field trips. Athletic trips last year, we had 20,100 miles for athletic trips. And then we had for our extracurricular trips like TNL and ASB, anything that a group wants to have, we had a total of 12,200 miles. The picture posted up there is on the slide is one of probably the most interesting ones we had last year. All the trips are interesting to each group, but this was when we took our graduating seniors to local elementaries and middle schools to walk through the halls in a celebration of their accomplishments, and also to encourage students to keep going in their education. One of the big data points that we do provide in our yearly report is the fuel purchase for the year and how many gallons. So we purchased 78,500 gallons of diesel and then 4,700 gallons of unleaded and propane for a total of $324,000. Some previous years reporting data, because fuel has changed. We all know in the pump that the fuel has gone up. Just some little points of data for you. In 2018, 2019, we purchased $151,000 of fuel. In 2019, 2020, we purchased 212,000 gallons of fuel. After that, we had, in 2021, we had 154,000 gallons of fuel. And then we finished the end of the year for 22, it was this amount right there, 324,000 gallons. $324,000 worth of fuel. So there was an offset year when there was COVID. We spent $77,000 in fuel that year. So, and the other big part of our funding STARS report is the student count. So yeah, I'm going to go back a little bit to 2019 and give you some data on what the numbers were looking like in 2019. In the fall, we had 6,423 students that we were able to count for our STARS report. Those are combined with gen ed and special service routes students. And if you notice up there, our fall numbers are always higher and they tend to dip in the winter and spring. In 2020, 21, we had, that was during the COVID year, we had the fall session, we had 6 students that we transported. As we went through our hybrid, and then we went to 218 in the winter, and for our spring count, we ended up with 2,450. Also in that picture, right there on the slide is we have a picture that we did during the COVID lockdown for the graduating seniors of 2020. We did a drone flyby with the help of YB Tech staff, and it was a process to get FDA or FFA permission to fly so close to the airport. It was a really neat thing that Mr. Porter came up with that wanted to do something, and we went with that, and everybody else jumped on board to assist that that video creation and the flying of the drones and the capturing of that video. So we get to 2021-22, our numbers were 4,900 for the fall, and then you can see it drops in the winter and spring there. One moment. So this fall, we ended up with 5,338 was our total count. So numbers have kind of started pre-COVID. They were doing pretty good, and then they also dipped due to COVID, and then coming back out of COVID, they started to climb. And so this year we do have a higher number of 5,338 that we counted for this fall. With that, I would just like to say that data is produced every year. We provide that to the state for our funding calculations. At this moment, I'd like to transition to our routing software. What's going on in transportation over the last year and a half is that we did purchase a routing software to assist the office and drivers with coming up with a faster way to create routes, but also to make them more efficient and provide us some extra capabilities that we can do. On the slide up here is what you're seeing is the new software, along with the tablets that were purchased with that software, allow us to track vehicles in real time. And so you're seeing a map of the city with triangles on it. Each triangle is a bus moving on a route that it's doing. And within that, if you clicked on each triangle, you could see the speed and location of where it's at. So Traversa is the name of the routing software. It allows us to collect real-time data to check route efficiencies with our routes. It gives us instant driver notification and vehicle location of the vehicle. It also comes with a parent app that is slowly being rolled out. But coming through that COVID experience, we realized that we needed to get more technology to speed up our process to provide services and look at it and adapt quickly to requests from the district and requests during COVID. And so coming out of that, Traversa's filled that gap. Some of the other things Traversa does for us is it allows us to track past information by up to the minute. So if for example, a parent calls or a school calls looking to see if a bus went by a certain location, that picture right there shows us the line that bus was driving for the time period selected. So it could be an hour time period, it could be a half-hour time, or whatever we really need to look at. So we're able to provide parents or the buildings, yes, we were there, or no, we didn't go there, and investigate further. The tablets that I mentioned that have been incorporated with Traversa is they allow our drivers to have electronic directions, like a Garmin or like your phones that you use when you take a trip for Google. On the slide above here is you're showing on your left side there is what a driver sees when they are looking at their route. And if you can see on there's these like orange circles. Those are the actual bus stop locations that they are going to stop and either pick up kids or drop off students or begin a new route. On the right side of that is when they reach one of those circles, if students are assigned to that pickup area, it pulls up the list of kids, the list of students assigned to that bus stop. What you're seeing there on the right side, though, is you can see that, if you can tell, but there's a load and unload button to load students on. Currently, our sped drivers are loading kids onto the tablet system as a way of taking attendance on the bus. And so that allows us to also pull back reports and see if the student was actually loaded or not at that level. And we are working towards eventually, hopefully, having our gen ed buses also incorporate that. If you look on that far right picture still, that you see a student, you see a hand going up to the side of the tablet there. There's a scanner to scan an ID card to be loaded onto a bus. So yeah, it will notify the student's not supposed to be on the bus. It also will notify, yes, the student's loading on your bus. The tablet actually gives the driver information hands-on to look up students. So if a student didn't know where he was supposed to be, they could ask the driver, give them their name or ID, and the driver can look it up from that tablet and find out what route they're supposed to be on and give them further instructions, whether take them on board or whether let us notifying dispatch that they're taking them to school, and then trying to figure out the back end of that. So when they get to school, go to the office, get registered for the right bus, and so the tablet does give that ability for drivers to look up in the moment. As you look at this new slide here, on the left side is what our office sees when we're planning a route. It shows, it shows stop 1, stop 2, stop 3, and that's an address point with times. And it's easy for us to build a route one way and then flip it and reorganize it as we need to. And it cuts down a lot on time. Also, on this slide here is just showing more information. On the driver's side, it's going to show their student list so that as they look at stops, they can find out before they get there who's on their route and what stops they have, and see who if anybody's been added. So Traversa has really changed the way we do things in our department as providing information. We are hoping that in the next year or two, we can provide a lot more information to parents about not just bus times, but actually when their kids get scanned and scanned off the bus. And for that, I will end the Traversa piece of that.
Before you move on, can we ask some questions about Traversa?
Sure.
You said that there was an app that's rolling out.
Yes,
Is that an app for parents?
it's an app for parents.
And so tell me about that. What benefit would that be for parents?
So what the app does is one, once you're logged in and you've put your students' information in there, it'll tell you what your students' scheduled bus time is and what bus route they're on. So before school, like at the beginning of the year, if they're loaded up properly, they should be able to look at that and say, okay, my student's on a route 20. Here's the pickup time estimated on paper, which you would see on the sheet that we have there when we build a route. What it does also do is when the bus is in operation and then the driver's logged into their tablet, it gives an updated ETA of when that bus is coming based off the real time that it's scheduled. So if the bus is traveling downtown or through the city and they hit a multiple red lights or are delayed in traffic, it'll adjust the time to show later. If they're ahead of schedule because they're hitting green lights all the way through, it's going to tell them it's coming early. So that's the real, I think the real important part, I think, for parents, because a lot of times we get calls, did the bus go by? Has it gone by? Is it on time? Those are the kind of questions that it'll help answer.
So parents could conceivably log in, say in the afternoon, and find out if their child made it through the bus to the bus stop.
Yes, then to even go a step further, yes, if they're being scanned on or scanned off, yes, it will tell them when they scanned on or scanned off in that app.
It's a great tool for parents.
Yes.
When will that be operational?
Well, we are testing it out on a few sped routes at the moment. I'm hoping by the beginning of next year it comes out for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have a question behind you.
Yes.
So I know that's, I'm not supposed to.
No, sorry. Yes. Yes. They will see the bus route line and they will see the bus moving across town on the map. Yeah. And the reason it might be that haven't rolled it out yet is because to make Traversa work, there's a lot of data that we have to put into it to make it work. It doesn't just come out of the box and start. You have to build basically our district map and all the nuances with streets and the streets that we allow our buses to go down and operate. So that takes time and a lot of efforts going into that at this stage. So yeah, we have them running on all buses, and our sped buses are, like I said, our special education buses are actually scanning them on and scanning them off or inputting them manually.
You said that route efficiency is one of the features of the software. Have we created new routes or changed routes based on recommendations from that feature? And if so, do we have a sense of how many miles a day we're saving and therefore how much gas we're saving by using that route efficiency feature?
Well, I know for example, our sped routes, our special education service routes, we do create those every year. So those are, in a sense, efficient in the way they plot the students on the map, and then we organize that route, how it's going to flow. Have we looked at the data yet to see what's operational across the board? No, we know how many miles our routes are, any route is based on that software. the challenges that we face is the way we operate on a bigger scale. We don't operate necessarily in boundary schools. We operate, kids travel from east to the west and west to the east for all different elementary and secondary levels. So it's really challenging on that part to make it super efficient, but it does help. We can see where there's routes that are completing their routes quicker, and they have more time to maybe do more or help us in other areas that we need help in.
Okay, thank you.
Martha, if I could just jump in for a minute. When we talk, right now, they do have to, as Art has said, plug in the names of the kids into the tablet in order to know that they're on the bus. The ID scan is not active yet. When we do look at a badge, we need to connect that with food services, safety and security, transportation. It needs to be a badge that students can wear that will do a variety of different things in the school district, not just, one badge for transportation, one for the library, one for the cafeteria. So again, we're going to be working on that. I know Art said hopefully by the fall, but I didn't want anybody to think that was rocking and rolling in the fall in case we run into some issues getting that out. And then the implementation of that is another concern as to we want it to be effective, efficient, and we want students to use it. And I don't know if you're aware, but we've had ID badges for students for a long, long time, and the efficacy of that is hit and miss. And we know that that's super important. So again, a campaign, a marketing campaign and strategy to ensure that it is valuable. You need to have it and you need to use it. So again, all that is in the works.
I've read about like RFID scanners that are at the classroom door, and kids come in and scan their badges, and it takes care of attendance. It's along that line, correct? So we would have RFID chips embedded in the badges, maybe?
Well, that's what we have to figure out. Is it going to be Bluetooth? Is it going to be RFID? What type of technology is going to best serve that need? And so it's a little bit bigger, more complex problem than just saying give a student an ID badge and rock and roll. So just wanted to bring that to your attention in case we're not where we think we need to be. All right.
There would be an awful lot of applications, I would think.
Yes.
Within the district for something like that.
Yes, and we have to make sure Transversa talks to Skyward, that talks to the library management system, that talks to, so again,
Food
there's
services.
food services, that talks to safety. I mean, so yes, it's a very complex picture we're trying to paint, and we're taking it up with our operations meetings, and we're just in the initial discussions around it. So again, we're working towards that. It's going to be very valuable, we think, in a variety of different areas for students and families in the school district. So it's a work in progress.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so continuing on, to take us out to a different perspective, take us out to a different perspective at transportation. The biggest thing that we do is the safety of our equipment that we use and the safety of our drivers. We have twice a year we have state inspections that come through, and we have historically been in the high 90 percentile in passing all of our inspections. We have a winter inspection that does 25% of the fleet, and that's an unannounced inspection. They just show up and they start pulling buses out and testing them, and for the safety specs they have. In the summer, we have 100% inspections done, and we've continuously had our percentiles in the 90%. It has to go with our mechanics that work in the shop have been there for quite a few years, and our service tech, they've been there quite a long time too. And so they've had a lot of pride in taking care of our buses, and they've historically and annually been in the top 90%. So they do a great job on that. Over the last year and a half, we purchased 7 new buses, the Bluebird make. All these buses were equipped with safety belts, and we out of those 7 buses, 4 were special education buses, and they were purchased with a propane engine to test out propane as a cleaner fuel. Most recently, I believe you guys were, the board was taking on a trip in city here, and you guys were on a propane bus. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but the propane buses, one of the things they do is they run quieter than a normal diesel bus. So we are looking at that. We're seeing how they operate. We're testing them out with 7 buses. We bought 3 larger diesel transit buses that also had seatbelts on them, and they are in operation now. They are used on routes and field trips. One of the highlights we had this we're in the process of this, grant that we've been awarded from the State Department of Ecology for Washington. We were awarded 3 electric buses, in the grant. That was the most you could get out of this grant, is 3 buses. The goal of the grant was to retire older buses that we might sell and scrap, or not sell, but sell to the public and be on the road, that have older, more polluting diesel engines and in their chassis. So the goal of the grant was to get older buses that have more pollution off the road and to also transition districts into thinking about electric buses. And so one thing of the grant is it does provide some subsidies to it. So just up on the screen here, we have a cost of electric bus for us that we ordered was $404,000. The cost of that diesel equivalent was $170,000, and the grant covered $234 of that, the difference in that. And one of the things the grant did was it awarded $225,000 to implement the installation of charging stations and infrastructure, which is just trying to help bridge the gap for districts to try electric buses. We know in the future there will be more grants coming out from the federal government and also from the state of Washington to encourage districts to consider moving to a more electric fleet. This is our first step into it. So we were very fortunate to get three buses, the full amount, and we'll have plenty of information to give you guys once they arrive and once we put them into use. They're projected to be here in May and June, and the infrastructure should be completed by then. So we also partnered with the World Resource Institute, which was a Jeff Bezos funded organization to help us look at our current fleet of diesel buses and possibly work up a transition plan to go fully electric by 2035. They've just provided us technical support. They looked at our data, looked how our routes were built, how the buses run, and gave us feedback for that. We also, in transportation, have started to build a motor pool. We currently purchased 2 SUV vehicles to help with supporting our field trip requests and other needs that we have seen an increase when we offer rentals. If you didn't know that, but transportation does have a role in renting vehicles from a vendor in town when small groups are needed to use a vehicle and go on trips. Some of them are T&L trips, some of them are sports trips. And so if you look up on the screen there, we have some data of how that cost has increased. And this is driven also by the fact that we do have a driver shortage that we've been experiencing for a few years now. And so last year, we had a total of $42,219 that we used on rental vehicles. And currently we're at $11,372 for this year. The 2 vehicles purchased they're already being used daily, and will offset costs over time. And we look at ordering more down the road to build our fleet of motor pool vehicles. Also, our drivers have been busy with working on our driver handbook committee, which looks at our procedures, operating procedures for drivers and in the district, how we operate with and how we transport students. We've got a lot of feedback for them this year. We are rewriting the book just to keep it up to date. Our safety committee has been focused on our bus yard, and making it a safer place to be. As far as getting out there, there's a lot of movement in our yard, and it's kind of amazing how we all every day pull out 51 buses at 2:00, and it's kind of an orchestrated maneuver. So they've been really great about trying to improve the safety of our yard, and then also looking outside our yard into. They operate at multiple buildings, so they're always giving feedback on traffic patterns and parking lots. So I'm mentioned driver shortage, and about 88% of the school districts nationally are seeing a driver shortage. Yakima has experienced about 27% loss in driving staff since 2018. And currently we have 25 general education routes operating. 3 drivers are on leave since the beginning of the year, and then we have 24 special needs routes that are operating, and 1 driver's been on leave from that group. If we can solve the driver shortage, some of the things that we could do is we could bring back the YV Tech AM/PM service that was operating pre-COVID, and it was actually gaining traction. It was very promising, but due to the shortage after the COVID, we weren't able to support that. Also, we are always in the fielding requests to join the Mid-Valley League for middle school sports, which would be a great accomplishment if we can get there. But we're always trying to increase our fleet to get to that point. And also just offer extracurricular trips during hours that we normally can't operate. And that would help us to reduce charter costs. So if a trip leaves during the times that we are transporting students, we normally have to get a charter bus to help with that, because they're leaving during either earlier or when our buses are operating. To go along with our driver shortage that we have.
Quick question, how are kids getting to YV Tech right now?
They are parent transport at the moment, and then we do provide services. Well, parent transport and city transit.
So if you're coming up from the lower valley, it's hopefully your
No,
parents
no,
are
no.
dropping
No. We're talking about Yakima students.
So yes, sir, and please allow, I'm glad you brought that up, because as I look at that first bullet point under adequate staffing, this is a huge concern, especially as we're talking about equitable access. We have to remember that YV Tech serves districts throughout the region, and what we see with the other school districts is, of course, they transport on their bus to YV Tech and back. And so with the drivers that they have, they're able to provide that access for all of their students. What we have in Yakima, and we are really the host district, is that we don't have enough drivers to provide the transportation within our own district to and from YV Tech, which again it's a big issue. So our driver shortage is impacting all of our students, but primarily those that really need access to the programs that are there. So my own son does attend, and he drives himself, and that is not the case, obviously, for every student. The majority of our students can't do that, and so it's really something that is concerning, and we do need to find a way to really address the driver shortage, and it's something that has happened, obviously, nationwide and certainly in Washington State.
Have we looked at the impact of, do we have a sense of how many kids aren't going to YV Tech because we aren't able to provide transportation?
At this point, we do not. I would suspect it's a large number. That's going to if that's information that you would like, we could certainly see if we could provide a survey on that. I would guess that if we were offering services, we would have, and again, I don't have anything other to go on than what I've seen in the building itself, but I believe that we could easily double our enrollment there, because of obviously the kids that are getting there have the ability to get there, or the infrastructure with a family that makes it possible to get there. And as we know, the majority of our student body is not in that same circumstance. And I do look forward to a time, we've kind of made it it's becoming a tradition to do these type of field trips during our retreat. I would love to take you at a time when we have school in session for a retreat to really see at least one or two of the programs that we offer at YV Tech, because they are phenomenal, and these are opportunities that our students are missing out on completely because of lack of transportation ability.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, when I visited Stanton, the Stanton staff brought that up as an issue specifically as a barrier to Stanton students because there is no morning or PM transportation to YV Tech, and so they have to get there on their own. And they didn't give me an exact number, but they said there were a significant number of students that are not taking advantage of YV Tech because of the transportation issues. So.
It had been like that prior to, again, this is the fourth year, halfway through the fourth year here in the district, but my first year here, it came to light that we weren't transporting even then, and we did have the ability to do so. So we actually, as a cabinet, did put together the authorization to get that started, and we were transporting people, students, that 2019, 2020 year, and then we went into the pandemic, and the shortage hit us around that time even greater. So yeah, we haven't been able to provide transportation since that time.
How many drivers are we short today?
We are 5 short right now. And going back to Traversa, we were able to shrink some routes and combine routes over the last year and a half. So we've been maintaining that at the moment.
Is that 5 short from our current standard of what would be filled, or is that 5 short, does that include what we would need to transport to and from YV Tech and for the Mid-Valley, or would that be even more?
So it would assist us, the 5 would be an account for the YV Tech morning and PM, but Mid-Valley would require a lot more drivers. 10 more drivers.
Plus 5 or 10 or 5 more?
5 more permanent drivers for YV Tech, just to get us to that point. 10 more drivers, and they could be sub-drivers, and they could be regular drivers to help us with the Mid-Valley.
Wow.
I would like to say that we do offer midday transport to and from YV Tech, so we have that, at that point, we do transport students back to Eisenhower, Davis, and Stanton from the morning session, then we transport students there for the PM session. We just can't give the morning or the PM at this moment. We do encourage, YV Tech to use city transit if they're able to.
Do we pay for that?
Not anymore.
Oh, it's free
Yeah,
for kids,
city
right?
transit's free.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so continuing with the driver shortage, just to give a perspective, these are 3 articles that have ran over the last 4 years in the Yakima Herald and I think on television. About the driver shortage being always there in the background of how we operate. So if you know anybody that's interested, we're always looking to hire. We do have paid training for them, and we do train them to drive and pass their test.
Is that full training for the CDL licensing, or they have to have a CDL and then you
No,
train them on the school bus?
they don't have to have any CDL. We train them to get their CDL, and then we turn them into drivers at that point.
Is that paid training time, so we pay for the training plus their hours
Yes.
to train?
Yeah,
Really?
so it's paid training. We offer the paid training.
That's pretty good.
There are just some minimal costs on the licensing for the person to get their license, like on their actual license. But we pay for the tests, we pay for the physical, we pay for the hours to train and learn how to drive.
I spoke at Rotary last week and spoke at 2 congregations, church congregations, giving updates. And I never miss an opportunity to let people know that we need drivers. So if there's anybody in the audience today looking for a position, I would also like to call out that our HR department is really looking at what they can do, and not just looking, that there have been negotiations taking place. And I don't know if you could just touch upon some of the creative ways that we're trying to have bargaining units cross over into transportation to create full-time positions. So in maybe under 3 minutes.
Absolutely. with the 11 different bargaining units, each bargaining unit sticks primarily to their unit and only their unit. But each unit also has casuals or substitute labor. And so we have spoken during our last negotiations with both the directors here and their labor representatives about why is it that current employees of the district would have to go through a different vetting process, or why couldn't they get additional hours? So historically, the district was opposed to working overtime. If we could have either our food service group, our paraeducators, and or our evening custodians be willing to take on some of these routes, it would cost us a little bit more per hour to do the work, but we would save substantial amounts when it comes to what we pay when we have to charter. So one of the ideas is looking to our existing employees. My first group that I think would be most advantageous is food service, because they typically get off by 2:00. And I think that there's maybe a stigma of it's a large vehicle, and there are some individuals that may be afraid of jumping in the bus. So one of the things we would like to do is take drivers who currently work and use them with our HR department to go around and see if we could market the extra hours. I think it would make a huge difference for some of our older employees who are getting closer to retirement, and explain to them the difference of working those extra hours, how it would impact their AFC, which would then have an impact their average final compensation to their retirement benefit, and see if they would be interested in doing that. Again, it would cost us a little bit more money than what it costs us for a sub, but it would be less money than what it costs us in it for a charter. And if we could get that going, that is something that they've already agreed to and approved of. We also, since I also run maintenance and operational services, have talked with my management team about allowing a custodian who's willing to work for those extra hours to, say, start a little bit later in their day, because they typically start about 3:00, have them begin their shift with the afternoon transportation route, and then be willing to go and work at their school and start the cleaning a little bit later. It gives them extra hours. It gets them better pay. They're earning it. It's not a gift by any way, shape, or form. But again, somebody has to be willing to do that and be willing to work a longer than an 8-hour day. And so it's really about trying to get them to take that opportunity, since they're already employees of ours. Really, that's the idea in a nutshell.
Okay, at this point, I am at the end of conclusion here, and if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. But I want to thank you for the time, for letting us present and come down here and share transportation with you. And thank you.
Do we have any other questions from board members or comments?
I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to thank you both for being here. It's been a very long time since we've had a presentation from transportation. And it's nice to see all of the innovations that you're pursuing to kind of make the work of transportation kind of meld into the other work of the district. And I know that you're an integral part, your group is, of making sure that kids, get to school on time and get home in one piece and all of that. But the use of technology and the Traversa software is really commendable. And I think it's going to be a great asset for not only for you all working your buses and everything, but also for parents, that they would have access to the information about their students, and if they made it to the bus, and if they made it home, and that sort of thing. So thank you for your presentation. It's quite informative.
Thank you, Martha. Any other questions or comments?
No questions, but also want to thank you for technology is really impressive. And I just think about forever ago when sent my son to school on the school bus for the first time. It was really scary, and they're safe, but like you don't know because you're just kind of trusting, the system. And so I can imagine the security and comfort that parents will have knowing they can see exactly when their kid gets on the bus. And as someone who skipped school on occasion when I was in school, the fact that you can't do that anymore with the system, right? Because people will show your where you're at, if you're going to be on the bus or not. So I think there'll be a number of benefits there. So thank you so much for all your work. It's exciting to see that kind of innovation.
I'd also like to thank you again. Ryan, did you have any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you. Very thorough, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank you very much. I do have one question. One of the things that we're working on as a district is how we handle kids when we know they have difficulties at home or in the community, and our Handle with Care program alerts our school staff when kids have experienced trauma the night before. I'm just curious what kind of training we give our bus drivers, who are very often a child's very first contact in the day or their last contact at the end of the day, what kinds of training we give them around handling behavior or recognizing kids in trauma, or what kind of training are we giving our drivers around some of those behavioral and emotional issues?
President Walker, that's an excellent question. And to be honest, there hasn't been any, or there has not been much. And so one of the things that we have in play, recognizing that, is through our CPI training, which used to be the right response training. There are modules on de-escalation and identifying behaviors, because in the work that the three of us have done together, it's become very apparent that training has not existed through the drivers don't receive it anyplace else unless they have that background when they come in. And so with the work of safety and security and with transportation, that will be a part of ongoing training for drivers so that they can learn how to respond to those type of situations, make sure it's appropriate, make sure it is in the best support of the student.
Thank you. I think our drivers would find that very useful, just in terms of how do I handle a kid that's coming off the wall.
Right.
And it would be great for our
and we have
kids
had discussion. Yeah, we've had discussions about that with the drivers committee to find out what they think would be most beneficial. And we're going to start with the modules and CPI around de-escalation strategies and move forward from there. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And again, thanks for your time this evening. It really was a very, very interesting presentation and very exciting to see some of the things you're doing. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on our agenda, we have items of board interest. And there are a couple of just business reminders to remind our board members. Our F1 financial reports are due, I believe, April 1. So be sure you're thinking about that and getting that in. I think we get reminders from that system, but we just wanted to let you know to not ignore your F1 filing for the year. A couple other items. We had an item on the last agenda on board logistics, and I skipped over it accidentally, and it's not a pressing item, but it's something that we need to, it's come up in discussions individually and about some board logistics. Some of the issues that came up were like the number of meetings we were having per month. There's some talk of reducing the number of meetings if we can efficiently operate with fewer meetings. Also, the issue of translation for all meetings. Right now, I believe translation only occurs on business meetings. And so there's a question that should we be having translation at all the meetings if we're truly making it accessible to our public? And then kind of tied in with that, if we were to say reduce to 2 meetings per month, that all meetings would then be business meetings so that we could conduct voting activity at all those meetings. And then if we decided there's no hard and fast agenda here, except the issues come up. So we could decide to maintain the status quo. We could say, let's talk about maybe reducing the number of meetings per month. And then if we did decide to do that, when would we implement such a change? So those are just kind of tossing that out there, and be interested in hearing your thoughts. Now, I think that's come up in some of our individual conversations with the superintendent, but I don't think we've addressed it at a board meeting. So thoughts on that?
I'm not sure how we can reduce the number of meetings that we have, given the requirements of policy governance. And it's been my experience that it's much easier to cancel a meeting than it is to try to schedule a meeting as you work through the year and people's calendars get full and such. If we come to the point where, the agenda isn't very large and it can be pushed off, we have in the past decided to cancel a meeting here and there and just move those agenda items to a future meeting. But if we stay with our school visits once a month and understanding the requirements of our policies regarding policy governance, I'm not sure that there's a way that we can reduce those on a regular basis, reduce the number of meetings that we have.
Thank you. Other thoughts, perceptions?
I certainly wouldn't be opposed to the idea of fewer meetings. I think it'd be interesting to look at what that agenda for the year would look like. I think I would share similar concerns to Martha. We have a lot of policies to review and evaluate and a lot of monitoring reports. And so, if there's a way that we can work it out where that makes sense, sure, I think that's a great idea. I think it'd also we should be mindful that our meetings don't end up too long. Our evening meetings, sometimes they haven't been super, long lately, but for a while there, they were 3-4 hour marathon meetings, and that can be a challenge, particularly for an evening business meeting that starts at 7. We had some pretty late nights a few times, and that would be hard if more of our meetings went that long and were that late. Ultimately, I'll, of course, do whatever the board needs, but it'd be interesting to look at a proposal of what that might look like. I really enjoyed the school visit, so I wouldn't want to eliminate that. That's fun. I think we all enjoy that. So it'd be interesting to look at what that would, like a proposal of agendas for the year to look at. The reports like we had today, right? We enjoy those, the monitoring reports, the policy reviews. I guess the other thing that maybe could be on the list is the discussion around changing the levels of the financial approval levels that we discussed. I think that would save some time on the agenda, not a huge chunk, but all good discussions. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I would support that, but would just want to make sure that we're still able to get all of our business done in a timely manner.
Okay, thanks. And that is the trade-off is, fewer meetings might mean 2 longer meetings a month. So, how does that trade-off fit? Ryan?
Well, I have several thoughts on the topic, and I think a lot of this came up after chatting with colleagues at WASDA as we were in different sessions, and certainly meeting a lot of other newer board members and finding out how their boards function and how often they meet and what those meetings look like. And I think tonight is a perfect example. We spend a lot of time hearing reports, whether we're at a school, hearing a report from a school, or tonight, as an example, this afternoon, hearing from our transportation officials. Those reports vary wildly. They vary in time, they vary in information. And I think if our board had a more cohesive strategy of letting our staff know in advance exactly what we would like to hear from our schools, whether that's an elementary school, middle school, high school, or it's a department, it would help them plan for an efficient and succinct report that would give us the information that we're able to track over the years and maybe glean more historical information from that. These are wonderful reports. They're great, but a significant amount of this is stuff that, quite frankly, I'm not going to remember the next time we hear from transportation. Whereas if we had quantifiable metrics from any of the groups that give us reports, we would be able to relate back in a way that would be more valuable to us and would take less time in our meeting structure. I also think that there's just a heaviness to it. When you look at meeting 4 times a month or whatnot from a volunteer position, I fear that we make this job so onerous that certain people in our community could never consider running for this office. And I think that's something that we have to be conscious of. I'll be honest, there's a lot of times when I'm enjoying the reports. I enjoy hearing from people. I enjoy the camaraderie. It's nice to be around each other. We can't do a lot where we aren't in a publicly noticed meeting, so we don't have those opportunities to discuss and hear from each other. So it's nice to be together. But we are at a point, in my opinion, where I think we're spending too much time not getting as much benefit from that time. And I go back to WASD in my brain. I think there are other large-scale districts our size and bigger all around the state that function off of policy governance, and it would be very easy to consult with them and find out what their meetings look like and how they're functioning and what their struggles are as well. We don't have to recreate the wheel, but we can certainly learn from other people and become more efficient in the process.
Okay, thank you. And I would be glad to follow up on gathering some of that kind of information and data and coming back with some kind of proposal and sitting with our superintendent and with Barb and seeing, how can we streamline our agendas. We've done, I think, a good job of cutting back on the lengths of some meetings and streamlining some things. But I had the same sense in talking with other boards. I don't know of any board of a district our size that meets as much as we do. And somehow they manage to provide good service to the district and good monitoring, but I don't know of anyone that meets as much as we do. So it's just kind of a way, let's be a little more efficient, and we'll take a look at that. So thanks for your thoughts and comments. And, it's not an easy solution, but I think it can be worked on. Trevor.
May I comment?
Absolutely.
In hearing this conversation, I did make a note that in alignment with what Director Beckett mentioned, that might become a topic for a board retreat to determine what the board would like to see as far as structure, length, information. I know that a little bit longer time is needed to flesh out what that would be. You're all aware that I did send some communication over the last 24 hours, and within that communication, I was able to reflect on a lot of things that we do as a district, including some possible board considerations that I listed. I believe it was in section E of the document. And one of those suggestions was to engage with a third-party individual. And in that, Mary Alice Huschel is one of the foremost superintendents that we've had in the state. She was the superintendent of Renton. She was a national finalist for Superintendent of the Year. She was Chief of Staff for the Governor's Cabinet, Gates Foundation. Anyway, my point is that she has been involved with school boards and efficiency for numerous years. And if the board so chose, we could engage with her as a third party to work on the dynamics between board, superintendent, kind of activities and functioning. And I would be pleased to reach out to her and see if she would engage with President Walker and myself to then come forward with some kind of not just recommendations, but kind of detailed processes that the board could either accept or modify or reject according to its pleasure. So if that's an interest, I would be happy to reach out.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments on logistics at this point? So we'll pursue that. We don't need a vote on that.
I don't think we need a vote, but just maybe a general consensus from the room.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to pursue.
I think there's value to that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work on that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And now back to Dr. Green. We have our superintendent's update.
Wonderful. Thank you. And the first thing I'd like to do is just start by acknowledging, and I'd like to thank, I believe it was Dr. Ellis who shared with me this afternoon a notification of Angel Camacho's passing, which has been now listed at Shaw and Sons. So while we don't have the obituary, you're well aware that we lost a student, a Davis student on Friday. And we had just some tremendous crisis response come together starting Friday, extending through the weekend into Monday. It would take me too long to detail all of the things that happened, but just rest assured, I'd be happy to share with you in a one-on-one, but it's just amazing what our teams did in coming together and are doing to support the family. The announcement reads as follows. Angel Camacho, aged 14, passed away in Natchez, Washington on January 20th, 2023. This brief notice was provided to give the family and friends a place to leave memories and condolences. If a full obituary is prepared in the future, it will be posted here. So that is the only notification we have at the moment. All right. So moving on to some other topics, I certainly want to acknowledge at this time we have two individuals here this evening that I wanted to draw attention to. We have James Gibb, Chief of Staff of Northwest Harvest, along with Thomas Reynolds, CEO of Northwest Harvest. We're thankful that you're here this evening. As you're aware, during our last retreat, we were able to tour that 200,000 square foot facility, and we're just excited about presenting a little bit later this evening on accepting a partnership with them. Other items that I'd like to share is that President Walker joined me on a visitation this last week. I believe we went to, it was Gilbert Elementary, and it's always wonderful to have visitors at the schools, and we really don't change what we do as a staff, and so it's nice to be able to go into a room to see what is happening, talk with teachers, observe instruction practices, and then debrief afterwards in the hallway. And what we did notice, just for an update for the board, we saw just high level, high quality instruction in the majority of the classes. We always have different varying levels of expertise, which is why it's so important to have highly qualified instructional leaders in our principals. We saw that the demand for our autism teachers or teachers of students with autism is increasing. We have 5 classes currently at the school that we visited, and that's a significant impact. At one point, it was eight classes, and we had kind of distributed them throughout the district. And so that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind, that we see the need for teachers of students with autism increasing. We also saw teachers really going beyond the norm. It was just an exciting thing to see that we had an elementary grade level teacher and a PE teacher. During their lunch hour, they were providing bracketed tournaments for basketball for kids to engage in, and they had really 2 whole grade levels involved in the process. So I think it speaks to the heart of our educators and the generosity of making sure that that their kids are taken care of and have advantages. And that extends to engaging with one another in activities. Attendance rates have decreased a little bit in the school that we visited. That was being really attributed to the time of year and the sicknesses that were going around. But basically, it was just a great visit. And I don't know if you have any follow-up, Director Walker, on anything you'd like to add?
No, I just ditto your remarks. It's always rewarding to get out in the schools and see what teachers are doing and what kids are doing, and it was one of the rewarding moments was I talked to one student in, I think it was a first grader, and I said, well, why are you doing this lesson? What's this for? And he could tell me the purpose of the lesson, and he could repeat back to me what they were working on, long vowels and silent E's on the ends of words, and he could tell me how that all worked and why they were learning it. That's a really good indicator that that kids are getting that message.
Our kids continue to amaze. I visited Yakima online this last week, Robertson, Nob Hill, Davis, and Adams. So again, I visit 4 schools a week for a total of 8 hours. Along those lines, I was at Robertson, and third grader, I believe, I was talking with him, and he had his a storybook open, and he said there are 56 alligators on these 2 pages. And I said, well, how many's on just this one page? And he said, 20, 23. And I said, okay, knowing that there's this number total and this number on this page, I shut the book and I said, how many are on the other page? And of course I'm thinking, I don't know if I could, it would take me a while to figure that out. Right. So I'm speculating on what the answer could be. And I got to tell you, he had the answer in the blink of an eye. And I just said, that is amazing. I can't believe that you came up with that answer so quick. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, I'm a math whiz. And, just kind of those comments that you get, the true comments from students. If you ever want to know exactly where you stand, ask an elementary student, but be prepared for the answer because they're going to tell you the truth. Other things that I just want to share with you today is that we also had a listening session, Dr. Darling and I, at Stanton Academy one evening. So we went there and engaged with parents in an evening event that is included in board docs. We were not fishing for anything out of the ordinary. There were simple questions of what's working well, where do we need improvement. We were basing the visit around primarily of things, and there you can see on the computer screen there now, talking about feelings of being included, excluded, segregated, or integrated. And we saw a high level of being included. And you can see that we had significant responses. We did have the presentation both in English and Spanish and had contributions in both languages. So it just gives the board a read of where the families that attended that evening event stood on Stanton Academy. And I can tell you that they were very positive comments. Dr. Darling, you have anything to add on that visitation?
One of the reasons why we chose to start at Stanton is because our CEE data that comes out every year highlights some schools that really have really strong parent engagement and parent empowerment data. And Stanton was one of those schools. And so we wanted to go to the school and say, what are you doing well? And how can we replicate that throughout the district? So we'll be continuing these listening sessions at other schools that really stood out highly on the CEE data.
Thank you, Dr. Darling. And I think the last item, another item that I want to share is Dr. Darling was a bit late to the meeting today, and I asked him to hold until the transportation presentation had concluded. But the reason he was not here at the beginning is because he was testifying to the legislature. So I asked him to just give a brief update on what that looked like this evening.
So I had the privilege of going before the House to discuss House Bill 1228, which is the bill supporting dual language and tribal language programs. And I was able to share with the committee some of the success we're having here in the Yakima School District, and also the need to continue that success. I also shared now how language is our strongest connection to our culture, our heritage, and we're striving to increase our relationships with the Yakima Nation, who has 14 confederated tribes and bands, but only 2 of those languages of the 14 still exist, and 1 is on the brink of extinction. So we're working hard with them to help them lift up and continue the Ixisquin language. However, they're also in a situation where they might lose their 13th language. And so it kind of wanted to impact to press upon the House that these bills, although to them they might seem superficial in that we're asking for money and we're asking for mandates, they are having a lasting impact on generations for our students in our community.
At this time, the last item that I feel impressed to share, based on what Dr. Darling just contributed, was along the lines again of the proposed board kind of recommendations based on the document that I sent you in the last 24 hours. And that suggestion, there was a suggestion therein to pair individual board members, which I'm sure you read, to a goal with the strategic plan or an area of interest. It could be one of the same. to allow for a deeper kind of contextual discussion and alignment for then report back to the board. I believe that that would allow for a closer opportunity to monitor, but also then kind of delve more deeply and build some greater understanding in one another as board members and what we're sharing out, but in the actions that are being taken. Because I know kind of along the lines of what was shared, these meetings do take a lot of time, and I think if we were able to pair up and understand what's happening in some of the departments and keep that time limited for you, because we know that you have other responsibilities. That's a big thing to consider. It might bode well for us as a board. And I share that because as we talk about legislature, I know that we have Director Rice, who's been very much involved in legislative actions, and I could see where that would be a pairing, just like we had with Director Walker at one point with our finance area. So I want to call that out. I don't want to lose that opportunity. And at some point, I would love to have either an agreement that we might test it with a couple of board members, or if everybody's on board. But I think that that's another operational opportunity. And I can explore this again with, you did give me permission to reach out to a third party, and I think it would be good to run it by that individual as well, who has kind of lived the reality of working with a board and being a long-term superintendent, to see if that is the most effective. So I just wanted to, again, get that in front verbally before the board, that I just think there are some tremendous opportunities for us to engage in deeper connected activities. So with that, I'll conclude my board update. And I guess, are there any questions about what I presented? And if not, so I'll wait for a second, wait time. Any questions on what I presented?
One quick question. How many parents participated? How many parents and students participated in the listening session at STAN?
I think total around 20. And Principal Chaplin said it was hands down the biggest turnout they've ever had.
Yeah, it sounds small, but it was big for the school. So the last item, just knowing that we had an event that reached national media in our city today. So this was a Yakima County issue. I do have Officer Nate Henyon here, Stacy as well. And just wanted to recognize that we understand that there are always concerns out there, and we can only control what we can control. The tragedy occurred about a half a mile from YV Tech. We were in just constant contact during that time after notification of what we should do with regard to the school in that vicinity. I think that it was handled very appropriately, and we did update the community where we were in the process in the afternoon. I'll just share with the board that my son attends YV Tech in the morning, so nothing was altered for him. And I think it speaks highly of our own security staff, our relationship with the police department, and our trust in the community. I'll just ask Stacy if you have anything to add, or if you have any questions for one of us on what we could answer about what we know today that's appropriate for a school district to respond to.
I'd just like to invite Nate up to the table here to be able to give us some of the facts of what happened today. And I'd like to ensure you that none of our students were at risk. I talked to Sarah Cordova it was about 5:45, 5:50 this morning when the incident first occurred. One of the things we have is an excellent relationship with the Yakima Police Department, and we know immediately when there's an issue of any kind that may negatively impact one of our schools or our students. And we get together at that point and decide what is the best course of action moving forward based on the information we have. We continue to update throughout the day and make adjustments as need be. So Nate, if you take a minute and just factually run through the incident today. Pardon me?
Is this the Dragnet version, just the facts, right?
Just the facts, sir, just the facts. Thanks, Nate. Nate Henyon is the Assistant Director of Safety and Security.
In the early morning hours, there was ultimately what was identified as a targeted attack occurred between two mini marts in the area of 18th Street and East Nob Hill. Unfortunately, in that attack, three people's lives were taken. YPD identified information and shared it with us, showing that the suspect at the time had fled the area in a vehicle. So we were quickly able to determine that there was no ongoing threat within that area. During this time, while that was being identified, we were in communication with Martin Luther King Elementary School. We are in communication with YP Tech. We are in communication with Washington Middle School and Adams Elementary. We also, at about 6:09 this morning, we contacted Officer Gary Garza, who's one of our school safety officers. We had him repositioned from Washington Middle School to YB Tech just to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to keep our staff and students safe as the event continued to unfold and the investigation continued. Ultimately, the person was believed to be out in East Valley, and units from the Yakima Police Department and the Yakima County Sheriff's Office have been dealing with that situation since.
Do we know if any of our students have been impacted by, I want to choose my words carefully here. Do we know if any of our students were related to those who passed away in this incident? Is it too early?
It's right now, it's too early. No, we haven't received any information. I don't think they released the identities of the victims in the attack. But that is something that we will be following up on immediately once that becomes public.
If there are no other questions, I'll pass it back to you, President Walker.
Thank you for your information and your continued support of our students and our families. Okay, I need to backtrack a little bit in the agenda because I kind of skated over during the members of the items of board interest. I didn't ask our fellow board members if you had anything to report out on. So I want to make sure we give you that opportunity before we move on.
As you know, legislature is hot and heavy, and everybody over there is running around with their hair on fire these days. We've got several hearings this week on various things that are of interest to school board members. One is the dual language bill that Dr. Darling testified on. There was another bill yesterday about, let me see if I can keep them straight. I don't think I can because I didn't write it down. But there are hearings coming up on levy equalization, the free universal free schools meals, I think was yesterday. And there was something called predetermined interest, which is, if passed and in its current state, would allow individuals who experienced an incident during their school years to subsequently, and subsequently something happened because of that incident. They experienced some kind of a medical issue or trauma-related issue or whatever. And there's no time limit on it. They can go back to the school district and file suit and, if with enough proof, be successful in getting compensated for whatever it is that happened to them in 5th grade and surfaced in their 30s. And so that could be a pretty sizable bill for school districts and employ many, many, many lawyers, I think. So school boards and some of the associations testified against it yesterday. I haven't heard the outcome of that. We won't know until they go into executive session on that bill to see where it lands. So there are bills coming up that are of great interest that we need to keep our eyes on. So I'm communicating pretty regularly with the superintendent to keep him aware of what I know, and he's keeping me aware of what he learns about some of the bills that are of interest to us. You want to talk about your meeting with Senator Torres?
I think what I just add is that it's been really impressive the way that the legislature has started to reach out to the Yakima School District. So I've had much more increased confidence coming from senators and representatives, more so than in any previous year. And it's not just locally. So I think that, the case in point, Dr. Darling, he filled in for me. I was contacted through a couple of individuals, Representative Liliana Ortiz Self from Mukilteo reached out for us to testify on the one today. And I think that will continue to happen. So we're gaining a very good reputation among the different organizations across the state, WASDA, WASA, and others. So it just speaks well to the involvement that we have in helping to support or curve some of the ideas that are out there. So I would encourage us to have, again, some type of maybe feedback loop. I think it would be interesting on a more regular basis for board members that aren't as involved in the legislative proposals. So we can maybe talk about that and see a way that we could kind of keep you more apprised other than in this manner.
I did provide comment last night on a bill that has not dropped yet, but I expect that it will in the very near future on transitional kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
I know that that's of great interest to us because we have a transitional kinder program, and it has several elements in it that would change the way we do things. Some of them would require more facilities because, I think we always have a waiting list because we don't have enough classrooms for these little ones. And so you've got capacity issues as to whether you have enough staff, whether you have enough room, whether you have enough building, that sort of thing. And there are other elements of that could be problematic. So I weighed in on that just with WASDA staff last night. They are meeting with a group tomorrow morning of all of the government relations people for the other education associations. And they're going to weigh in on ways that this potential bill could be adjusted or manipulated to get more support, gain more support. So, those sorts of things happen all the time.
I have one question. I know one of our district's priorities around the state was special education funding. And my understanding is there are several bills that actually have been introduced around that issue. Do you know kind of where that stands?
I don't have specifics on those bills, but I can get that for you. There is WASDA has a bill watch list that is updated every Thursday afternoon, I think. So the information that's on that would be like as of last week, but there are a number of special education bills that are making their way through the pipeline within Olympia. So I can watch for those.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. Any other reports from board members? Okay, thank you. Moving on, this is our first comment period from the public, and this would be in items on the agenda. Do we have any takers this evening? Okay. Well, now the item that two of our guests have a big interest in, Superintendent or Assistant Superintendent Locke or Dr. Green, would one of you like to introduce this?
I'd just add that we all have a lot of interest in this, and I know that if the board chooses to approve, there will be kind of imaginary confetti being thrown up between all of us. So, Assistant Superintendent Locke, would you like to introduce, or you want me to just jump in? Okay, all right. Okay, yes. Would you go ahead and read the action? This does have to do with our partnership with Northwest Harvest and being able to broaden the purchasing opportunity that we have lacked and prolong the ability to store food for much longer and avoid shrinkage of or loss of food in the process. And all of you have had the opportunity to tour the facility, and what we did not provide was the opportunity to see what we currently use. So it may be some later date. Certainly not now. I would love to take you and have you see what we're currently using, because where we're going is head and shoulders above where we are currently. So with that, would you go ahead and address the?
Sure. Thanks to Cassie and the work that she has done, working with North Wayne specifically, I think at Northwest Harvest, and welcome Thomas and James. We are so darn excited about this. So needed, and I'm glad I couldn't be with you last week when you did the tour, but I've done a previous tour and it's just incredible. So we really look forward to this partnership. So the requested action is that the Board of Directors approves the contract between our district and Northwest Harvest. Obviously, it aligns with our strategic plan in feeding students. And the fiscal impact, it's estimated at $550,000 annually. The final amount will be contingent upon the actual case volume. It's too difficult to predict exactly what that's going to look like, so we needed to leave that open-ended. The funding source for this partnership is coming from the federal food services monies. And again, Northwest Harvest's mission is to feed all community. They've built a beautiful facility here that will support the state of Washington, and we are fortunate enough to be able to have a partnership with them to serve the students and community of the Yakima School District and Valley and everything else you have to offer. Questions that I may answer for the board?
Any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve a contract with Northwest Harvest in the amount of $550,000 approximately?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve a contract with Northwest Harvest. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, Barb, would you call the roll?
Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Can I just say something real quick? The tour that we did a couple weeks ago now was really impressive. And so I think as a community member and as a board member, certainly very proud to have this partnership with Northwest Harvest, and glad that we're able to support the organization in this way, and that it's really a dual benefit arrangement there. So thank you so much for all that Northwest Harvest does in the community of Yakima. We know that there's a really high level of food insecurity, so glad that we're able to have this partnership. Thank you so much.
Would it please the board to allow Thomas, our CEO, to say a few words?
I'm Thomas Reynolds, the CEO of Northwest Harvest, and it's a pleasure to see you all again. When I visited McClure Elementary with Superintendent Green, and I watched the teachers organize the classrooms, and I saw the students distribute breakfast to their classmates, and I saw the passion of the people working in the kitchen, it was clear to me how important this work is. And the Yakima School District is a leader across the state of Washington, and this type of partnership is brand new. And I think will pave the way for other organizations to work together to make sure that there's healthy, quality, valuable food that really enhances the learning experience for children. And we are delighted to be a part of this partnership.
Thank you, and we're delighted to have you. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on to the next item. We need to approve to renew, this is a contract renewal with the Yakima Police. There it goes. For 2 safety resource officers in the amount of $228,000. Stacy?
Thank you, President Walker. So this is the annual SRO contract. Due to the new program that we have put in place with our SSOs, school safety officers, we're only requesting 2 SROs at this point in time to the fiscal impact of $228,000 for the 22-23 school year. Any questions I can answer?
Will you remind me what the new program is?
It is the school safety officer program. It has 5 non-commissioned officers that have at least 10 years of commissioned officer experience that are serving in the capacity at our 4 middle schools and Stanton Academy.
The overall number of people we have, is that, so the non-commissioned officers or non-commissioned people plus these 2, is that the same number of people overall that we've had?
Yes, it is.
And can you remind me what the training is of the non-commissioned people?
They have all the training that the SROs have. In addition to, they have to qualify with a weapon. And I don't have the job description in front of me, but there's a variety of certifications that they have to have in order to be eligible for the position.
Okay.
I did say that. They're former commissioned officers, yes.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
This stemmed from during the pandemic. We saw, in fact, if you've been following the news about the Seattle area and the number of police officers that they've lost over the last several years, that was really an impact across the state. And our relationship with the city manager and the police chief really benefited us during this time because we were able to have conversations with them and get in front of the shortage, knowing that the police officers were going to be pulled from our schools. And that led to the proactiveness of building out an internal response force with additional training to be able to de-escalate and think a little bit differently within the school setting. So we do currently have now only 2 commissioned police officers, and this is for those 2 officers. But as you recall, just a couple of years ago, I think we had 8. So it's down significantly, but we built up an internal force.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the contract renewal with YPD?
I move that we grant permission to renew the contract with Yakima Police Department for the 22-23 school year for 2 school resource officers in the amount of $228,000.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the motion. Can you call the roll, please, Barb?
Director Beck?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
And President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have an amendment to the superintendent's contract extending from the February 1 deadline for notice of non-extension to April 1st. Trevor or Mr. No, do you want to
I will
address
pass
that?
this over to Bob No.
Thank you, President Walker, and a bit more Board of Directors. Tonight, we're asking that the Board of Directors approve an amendment to the superintendent's contract which would change the date of February 1, 2023, which is the deadline for issuing the notice of non-extension, to April 1, 2023, and authorize the president of the board to sign that amendment. You may know that the superintendent's contract has a provision in it that basically extends it on a yearly basis. So each year it gets extended for an additional year unless prior to February 1, the board issues a notice of non-extension. So this year, because of what we perceive to be the board not having a complete time to evaluate and look at this issue, I believe that the superintendent's in agreement with the board to move that date from February 1 to April 1, which gives the board additional time to engage in considerations, evaluations, and so forth before having that deadline come. So we're asking that the board approve this amendment.
I would simply add that the catalyst for this was the challenges that have arisen with the ENDS report and providing timely data and explanation. And I am in full support of this. I think it's in the best interest of all parties to extend the date and be able to slow things down and get the right information and hit a timeline that is not as pressing for all involved. So I believe that this action will help us to get back on kind of a nice gait, a nice forward movement to address policy in a way that is that it should be. So I'm requesting this, and thank you for Bob for presenting.
And have all the board members seen the document that Dr. Green sent us earlier and had a chance to peruse that? Okay, so again, there were a number of glitches that occurred in the process, and I think we were all feeling a little bit pressured and backed up and kind of under the gun. And so this removes that pressure and allows us to do a thoughtful and thorough job and an appropriate job. So
I would move that the board of directors approve an amendment to the superintendent's contract to extend the February 1st, 2023 deadline for notice of non-extension to April 1st, 2023, and authorize the board president to sign the same on behalf of the board. The action would only be for the 2022-23 contract year.
yeah.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract amendment. Do I hear any other questions, discussion? Okay, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Now we have our second opportunity for a comment from the public. This is for any item that is not on the agenda. Do we have any people in the audience or
We do.
online that wish to comment?
Yes, we do. She signed up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Before you begin, I need to read some of the guidelines for presenting. Okay. So the purpose of community input is for the board to listen to concerns from the community. Speakers will be treated in a respectful manner. The board does not engage in dialogue at this time or typically respond to items that are not on the agenda. The audience is expected to give full attention to the speaker. Members of the public are asked to sign in prior to speaking. Introduce yourself and state all affiliations with the district. For example, if you're a parent, which school, if you're a staff member, which school, if you're a citizen of the public, etc. Please comment on agenda items. I'll skip that part. This is the second public comment period. So this is for items not on the agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes so everyone has a chance to be heard. Speak only once to the item you're addressing. Refrain from discussing the performance of any employee or the interpretation or application of the district's labor agreements, including grievances. And please refrain from making any derogatory comments about any individuals. Thank you. Yeah. You're on.
My name is Tony Ivy. I work at Davis. I'm a special ed paraeducator. I have a passion for travel, and last January, Eisenhower, my daughter used to go to Eisenhower, I posted on Facebook through the school that they were going on a trip, and I'm like, yeah, sign me up, I'll be a chaperone. Sorry. And her bus filled up, so I said, okay, we'll get our own bus from Davis going. Nothing was in place for that, so I did a lot of research. For months and months, I became an advisor of a club, which now I'm not because of legalities and stuff. And I ran with it, opened a booster. I had my own trip going. So I have a hard time finding online anything that talks about, I guess, third party. I keep hearing that from administrators and stuff. Third party that like are for profit can't be on campus. We can't offer trips to kids and stuff like that because it's not school sanctioned. But there's no really, I can't find any clarification on that. And I think it's a disservice to the kids because when I am on campus, I see colleges come on campus all the time. They're for profit, they're not free. Yes, it's education based, but so is the company I'm working with. They are an accredited institution. They offer scholarships. It is an educational thing. They can earn high school credit, college credit for an additional fee. I just learned that we can also learn, the teachers and educators going can earn professional credit hours. And I'm offering it to the whole school at Davis. And so, but I would like to offer to any YSD. There's trips mostly for middle school and high school, but people have taken kids of elementary age as well. Went to training about that, learned a lot. I went to Portugal. They sent me to Portugal. And in 4 days, I learned so much from Portugal. And I know that a lot of kids are not going to be able to afford to go travel once they're outside of school. And this gives them an opportunity to fundraise. During that fundraising, they're learning skills. They're learning sales, customer service, inventory, all kinds of stuff, money handling, job skills that they can use once they're out of school. And so every person I've talked to, parents, admin, staff, teachers and stuff like that, saying, it's a really great idea. Oh, I did that when I was in high school, or I took a group too, it was really awesome. So I think there's this stigmata about travel being so bad. The company I work with also has their own insurance. And it does state in their contract that the school is not responsible. I guess my time.
If tours?
Yes.
I guess we will take your comments and questions, and then you will hear back from us within the next 2 weeks. Can I ask for a little more information about what it is that you're asking of the board? It's not clear to me what it is you want.
Sorry about that. So
Would you mind if I tried to, I just want to make sure I understand.
Okay.
But you're talking about EF Tour Company, correct? So I know that they are a travel company that organizes student travel within the United States and outside of the United States. And I think what you're bringing to light is that the inability to advertise within the school setting, knowing that we are using the school district logo and name and brand out there, so to speak, to then recruit for these trips outside of our state or outside of the country. And you're asking for then the opportunity to recruit within the schools, yes?
Yes, I would definitely like to offer to the schools through our communication systems. And it's just an offer. I mean, it's very similar, like colleges coming onto our campus, offering, hey, come to our school, right? I mean, that's all I'm doing. I'm not saying they have to go. I just want to be able to offer that to them. And right now I'm just being told, but I don't see any documentation why I can't. Because you're saying they're for profit, but then again, on the other hand, so is colleges, and they're promoting all the time.
Okay, so it's like this is an exchange type foundation.
No, it's not exchange.
It's
We
not
just
EF, educational.
It is EF
Travel
Educational
company.
Tours. Yeah.
Oh, but now it used to be an exchange type.
No, it's not exchange.
Now it's strictly tribal organization.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's for any person that wants to go. I just wanted to offer it to the students of where I worked, but I'm not opposed to offering it to district-wide. I know at Eisenhower, they're trying to do the same thing. And I had a huge turnout in spring because I was allowed to promote then. And then come the fall, I was told I couldn't. And that really decreased the numbers. And I was like, I had a huge turnout.
Okay, so the issue is you want to be able to recruit, and you're being told that
Just,
you can't
yeah,
recruit.
just promote, let them know that this opportunity exists, and that's it.
Okay, well, okay, we don't usually respond, and I can't respond to the legalities, but we'll look into what your questions and concerns are and then get back to you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening and participating, and thank you for your work at Davis High School. Appreciate
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other folks here for public comment this evening? No more. Okay. Okay, now we have a few policy governance issues too. I think these are the first read on these coming up. Okay. So in the past, our process has been that we would each sort of take a turn presenting one. Would anybody like to present the global policy 1000.3.0, global governance? Sure. It's a short one.
I'll take the short one. I've made that mistake in the past. 1000.3.0 Global Governance Commitment. Purpose of the board on behalf of the Yakima community is to ensure that the Yakima School District achieves appropriate results for all students at an appropriate cost as specified in board ends goals policies 1000.1, while avoiding unacceptable actions and situations as prohibited in board executive limitations policies 1000.2. With the adoption of the board policies, ends goals, executive limitations, and global governance sequences, with the exception of board policies required by law, the administrative operation of the district is delegated to the superintendent to operate and manage in accordance with the above cited policies and in accordance with those procedures as adopted and or modified by the superintendent. All prior board policies in the 2000 to 6000 YSD policy series not referenced above are now delegated to the superintendent as operational procedure unless board approval is required by law. Last updated February 11th of 2014.
So remind me, Director Rice, on this process, if this, we do a survey monkey on, if we approve the policy as it is, we would just indicate so and we would recommend any changes to the policy.
We would ask if anyone has any adjustments that they want to make to the policy and have a discussion about that if there is. And then that's prior to, as you stated, we have the Survey Monkey and the results, we review the results of that.
Okay. So is there anyone that sees the need to adjust or amend this policy? Okay, so we'll have a Survey Monkey come out, and I believe that will be due Thursday. So short turnaround on that. But okay, next up, policy 1000.3.1, governing style. Do I have a volunteer? And, okay, and feel free to summarize. I think we don't need to. We do not need to read word for word.
Yeah, this is a 3-page policy.
Right.
I'm not going to read every word. This policy addresses the style of governance that the board of directors uses. amongst other things that fall under this category. There are a couple of lists in here that I think are important to just read, because they are, this is how the board operates. The board of directors will govern lawfully with an emphasis on outward vision rather than internal preoccupation, encouragement of diversity in viewpoints, strategic leadership more than administrative detail, clear distinction of board and superintendent roles, compliance with all appropriate and applicable district policies and procedures, collective rather than individual decisions, future rather than past or present, and proactivity rather than reactivity. Accordingly, and there's a number of these paragraphs here, so I'll just hit the high spots for each one. The board will cultivate a system, a sense of group responsibility. The board uses an agreed upon policy governance model as the model under which it conducts its governance responsibilities. The board will direct and inspire the district through the careful establishment of broadly written policies reflecting the board's values and perspectives. The board will enforce upon itself whatever discipline is needed to govern with excellence. Discipline will apply to matters such as attendance, preparation for meetings, policymaking principles, respect of roles, ensuring the continuance of governance capability, and compliance with board protocols. To ensure that all board meetings are conducted with maximum effectiveness and efficiency, members will do their homework and ask questions. They will listen with an open mind, listen to the issues, and ask questions. They will avoid surprises. If a board member wishes to bring up a controversial issue, discuss it with the board chair and superintendent before doing so. Put the team and team goals first, thereby emphasizing the avoid surprises element. Follow board protocols. Be present and avoid distractions. Display good manners, including tone of voice and body language. Support the majority. Once the board makes a decision, support the decision and work to make it a good one. Do not sabotage the rest of the board by publicly second-guessing the actions of other members. You can disagree, but disagree agreeably. Do not make snap decisions. Do not take action on non-agenda items brought to the microphone without the superintendent's recommendation or study. Discuss the issues. Do not digress, repeat, argue, provoke, or reminisce. Do not engage in side conversations. Do not play to the audience or monopolize the discussion. Support the president's efforts to facilitate an orderly meeting and value equal participation of all members and the perspectives they represent. Continual board development will include orientation of any new board members and periodic board discussions of process improvement. The board will allow no officer, individual, or committee of the board to hinder or be an excuse for not fulfilling group obligations. Monitoring of executive limitations will be limited to the agenda for purpose of monitoring organizational compliance. As a rule, members will direct any questions or concerns to the superintendent prior to official public presentations. Throughout the year, the board will attend to consent agenda items as expeditiously as possible. Any board member may request an evaluation of the board's process and performance of a meeting. The board, by majority vote, may revise or amend its policies at any time. Typically, it's customary that a proposed policy revision will be discussed at one session of the board prior to it being approved at a subsequent meeting. The board will observe the confidentiality of closed or executive sessions. Discussions held in closed or executive sessions are not to be discussed with anyone other than the board members, superintendent, and legal counsel. Last amended June 18, 2019.
I'm wondering if we're looking at different documents. I have a different date in here. I have 7/3/20.
Are you on the right policy?
Yeah, I'm on the one you just read. At the very bottom?
The adoption date starts with the year and then has the month and the date. So at the very bottom, it's 2019, June 18th.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Okay, well, thanks, Martha, at any rate. So are there any amendments or changes or observations that you would like to see made to this policy?
I don't have any amendments. I do have a lot of things on these three that I just sort of highlighted, particularly in terms of language. As we're thinking about this with our own self-evaluation, two things with this one really jump out at me. In paragraph number 1, I think it's the third sentence, it says the board will be the initiator of policy, not merely a reactor to staff initiatives. And I know that the board policy, initiation, of course, was through the Compass and the creation of that. It appears to me that if we wait between the deadline, or I should say the beginning and the ending of the Compass, that's a long ways off. And so we probably need to think about how we address that, as whether we're how we're doing it. It feels to me like we fall into the role where we're reacting to staff initiative as opposed to thinking about initiating the policy. The second thing that comes up, and this is a long-standing stylistic quarrel that I have with policy governance. In paragraph 4.3, where we talk about avoiding surprises, if a board member wishes to bring up a controversial issue, discuss it with the board chairperson and superintendent prior to bringing it up at a board meeting. Controversial might mean something different to all of us, and I think that's a little too loosey-goosey. I think the spirit of that is obvious, but it's one of those things that's very difficult to quantify. I'd also point out that we aren't allowed to have group conversations or group chats or group emails outside of our Open Meetings Act abilities. So these are really our only opportunities to talk about these items. So if someone brings up an issue, it shouldn't be viewed with such negativity. I would also point out at 3 points in this particular paragraph, it says the phrase "ask questions." And I don't think we should make any of our future new board members feel hindered on asking questions if they have something they want to ask. I think the idea that we would flesh out everything with the superintendent, with the board chair prior to us ever being in the room, in my opinion, violates the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. So I think that's something we need to take in mind. And maybe we don't need to change the language right now, but as we do our self-assessment and as we think about the policy down the road, I think it's worth noting and worth seeing how the board feels as a group.
Do you have another one, Ryan? Do you have another thing you'd like to talk about in this one?
No, those were the two.
Okay.
That in paragraph 1 and then in paragraph 4.
I'm just wondering if, to answer your concern about 4.3, if we just remove the word controversial, nothing should be brought up before the board that's not on an agenda. So the agenda is prepared with the board president and the superintendent working together to prepare the agenda. So would that, I guess I'm looking at it in a timeline. Would it meet your, would it answer your concern just to remove the word controversial?
Partially, absolutely. I think if looking at it from a parliamentary procedure point of view, nothing should be on an agenda for action if it hasn't already been discussed, right? But at some point in time, new business ought and should be discussed by this board. And maybe it isn't delved into with a lot of detail, but maybe it's something that comes up as a result of a conversation we've had, or as something that happens and we're reporting back in our board member report, where maybe that's taken by the superintendent and then gets mulled over and brought back to us. I just think that we have this tendency to kind of stifle discussion, and maybe it should be more on stifling action as opposed to the conversation. But I think, to your point, I think it absolutely partially would address it.
Because we can do that. I mean, we can say we're going to edit this and take that word out and bring it, just to have it go through first and second reading, unless there are other pieces of this particular policy that you'd like to have discussed and possibly changed.
I would leave it to the pleasure of the board. I think that would be a good first step, but I think more importantly, I want to have it on everyone's mind before they begin the survey. And then I know, of course, that means then you kick the can down the road a year before you can adjust it again. So maybe that's not the right way to do it, but.
Well, I can see how using the word controversial itself is kind of a loaded word in this time. And I don't know if there's a better word. I don't know if you wanted to just say bring up a new issue or bring up a sensitive issue. I don't know if I don't think there's anything that can't be discussed, but I think the key is avoiding surprises, like coming in with a new, bringing up a new issue that's kind of like, where did that come from? It's like, let's put it on the agenda and have a discussion with the superintendent and the board chair to say, let's, how are we going to present this issue? But there's nothing that can't be discussed, I don't think. Trevor, you wanted to add a comment?
As I was taking notes, I noted a comment made by Director Beckett that these controversial items should not be viewed with negativity. I think that's key. And I think that speaks to how we can really change our understanding of what the inquiry is. The thing that I'd also bring to the attention of the board is, as superintendent, I would want to make sure that I have the information that you might ask in an open session, because I would rather have things move along and not prolong over several months, getting back and getting back and getting back. So if there was an item that required some preparation or some research on my part or the part of my team, that would be something that is important for me to know so that I can do that research in advance and come prepared with responses when an item is surfaced. So when I think about that surprise language, it's not to avoid having the conversation, it's to be able to allow preparation to then bring forth the information that may be under that topic. So there may be a potential for revising that entire sentence. I don't know if you can take out one word and try to make it work. It may have to be reconstructed. I certainly don't want that off the table for the board. So just for what it's worth. I don't want my response to always be, I'll get back to you.
No.
That's it doesn't really sit well with, I don't have that information. Can I get back to you? And then it just becomes, that's the kind of back and forth that I would not want to become regular.
Well, but I think Brian brings up an important point, and we might want to wordsmith that whole section, that sentence, but and maybe more along the lines of what you just said, which is avoiding surprises. But if we wish to bring up a new issue, allow the superintendent or his designee to provide the required information to address that issue and develop the information so it can be addressed in a meaningful way. So it's not just this thing we're throwing out there to discuss, but that there's a purpose and background information on that issue. So the question I have is, if we want to wordsmith this, I mean, I'm happy to work on some new wording. Do we want to do that and bring it back later, or do we want to go ahead and do the Survey Monkey?
I think we can do it side by side. I think
Okay.
we can do the Survey Monkey. If anybody has suggested language for
Proposed
that
language,
particular
yeah.
paragraph, they can certainly include it as a
In
comment.
the Survey Monkey.
In
yeah.
the Survey Monkey itself. But if you want to, in the interim, if you want to work on language for this one, I don't know that,
Yeah.
Delaying because of the Survey Monkey is necessary.
Okay. So I'm happy to kind of rework that sentence, and then that can come out in the Survey Monkey, can't it? It would just be proposed new language in the Survey Monkey.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe you include that in your comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you had a language proposal, you'd wanted to add that.
No, I think that would be a really appropriate way to give people some time to think about it and reread it a couple times. And if they have suggestions in
Okay,
there,
sure.
I think that would be
Okay.
excellent.
Okay. Any other discussion around this particular policy? I'll make it.
Make yourself a to-do list.
It's 1,000. It's 1,000.30. Okay. Okay, back to, we have two more. 1,000.3.2, board job description.
I can take that one.
Okay.
The board job description outlines the essential functions of the board. The key function of the board and the key function and job of the board is to represent the community and lead the organization by determining and requiring appropriate and excellent organizational performance. On behalf of the people in our community, the board will fulfill the following functions: responsible governance. The board, with participation by the community, envisions the future of the district's educational program, formulates goals, defines outcomes, and sets the course for the district. The board employs and evaluates the superintendent. The board is committed to excellence in governance and strives to implement best practices aligned with professional association standards. The second item is creating conditions for student and staff success. To achieve its vision, the board establishes a structure which reflects local circumstances and creates an environment designed to ensure that all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Third is high expectations for student learners. This board articulates the belief that all students can learn and that each student's learning can improve regardless of existing circumstances or resources. The board establishes written governing policies in categories that address the broadest levels of all organizational decisions and situations. Those includes ends, goals, which are the end results that are desired for whom and at what cost, executive limitations or the constraints on the superintendent's authority, governance process, the specification of how the board conceives, carries out and monitors its own task, and board superintendent linkage, how power is delegated to the superintendent. Fourth is accountability for staff learning. The board's accountability for student learning includes adopting a system of continuous assessment of all conditions affecting education, including assessment and measuring of staff and student progress toward goals. Fifth is community engagement. The board serves as education's key advocate on behalf of students and schools. The board works to advance the community's vision for its schools, to pursue the district's goals, to encourage progress, to energize systemic change, and to ensure that students are treated as whole persons in a diversified society. The board serves as a link between community ownership and this district by reflecting the community's ownership priorities and values in the goals and objectives of the district and governing in a manner transparent to the community owners of the district. To distinguish the board's own unique job from the jobs of superintendent and staff, the board engages itself in these functions, the board defines and requires demonstration of accountability for successful organizational performance on end goals and executive limitations. The board initiates and sets parameters for ballot issues and communicates the rationale for these measures to the community. The board advocates for the district and the students it serves, including legislative awareness of the district's financial and other needs. The board attends graduation ceremonies and other district events.
Thank you. Any other comments or observations about this particular policy? Okay, we'll do another Survey Monkey on that one and move on. I'll read the last one. It's kind of part of what I do. Agenda planning. To accomplish its work products with a governance style consistent with board policies, the board of directors will follow an annual agenda which examines student achievement, examines organizational performances, improves board performance through board education, and ends goals policy are reviewed, each policy will be amended to align with the current strategic plan. The board's annual planning cycle will include each year on the last day of October, so that administrative planning will conclude each year on the last day of October, so that administrative planning and budgeting can be based on accomplishing a one-year segment of the most recent statement of long-term ends goals. The cycle will start with the board's development of its agenda for the next year. The annual planning calendar will include consultation with selected groups in the community, board development and training designed to improve the board's ability to perform the work identified in the board's job description, scheduled monitoring reports, these will be included on the agenda, and superintendent contract renewal and condition to be decided after review of monitoring reports. So we're kind of in the throes of that right now. So any needed changes or amendments to agenda planning?
I'm wondering with the last year's change, or the year before, I guess, the change in Dr. Green's contract year and the subsequent change in when we conduct his evaluation, which is now like January. If we need to change the wording in, where is it? In section 1, where we talk about annual planning cycle concludes on the last day of October and reflects the accomplishment of the prior 12-month period, essentially. Essentially, that's what that said. I think that's what that says. That's how I read it. We don't have anything, school year doesn't end in October. His contract doesn't end in October. Our board self-evaluation occurs in August. So I'm just wondering if we ought to maybe adjust that.
I'm wondering too, because when I read that statement, I thought, where did October come from? I mean,
It was
don't understand
there
the
at the
history.
beginning of when we started with policy governance back in 2007.
Okay.
So I think the intent was that you would commence your planning over the summer and conclude it in October so that you know what you're doing for the whole rest of the year.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily how I read that.
Okay, so when we do have the schedule of when we review ends policies, and that's laid out schedule for the year, when do we determine When do we
Retreat.
readjust? Or is that a continuous cycle that we just go through every year?
Well, we approve the policy governance calendar at the retreat or at the
Okay,
first meeting in September.
yeah,
That's what we've done historically.
okay,
And we can adjust that throughout the year, as we've done when we say we only need to review this annually now rather than semi-annually, as we review each policy. So it can be adjusted throughout the year, but initially it's approved. We have initially approved it either at the retreat or
yeah.
whenever we meet at the end of September or at the end of August or beginning of September. Your mic.
I think changing it to August makes sense, so we have a final decision by then, and that we can plan for the whole year, aligns with the school year.
That we conclude the planning cycle by the end of August?
That would be if we can schedule a retreat by the end of August. There have been years when we've not been able to coordinate calendars enough to do
Right.
that. So
Go ahead.
If you just had a generic by the fall retreat, might leave it a little bit more open.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was looking at that originally. I highlighted the same thing. And I was thinking of it more in terms of the second part of the sentence, so that planning and budgeting could be based on accomplishing the one-year segment. My question is, I guess, how much time from the retreat before the end of the year is helpful for Dr. Green and the team to have that planned? Are we rushing them if we move it up, or is that actually more beneficial to have that be a little later in the fall?
yeah, well, we approved the budget in August or by August. By the end of August, we have to have approved the current year budget. And then I think, Jake's not here, but I think they start working on next year's budget like immediately thereafter, I think. So I guess it would be a matter of,
So is planning cycle more than just the budget, or is it truly only referring to the budget? Is this whole thing is on the agenda as opposed to just the budget? We're talking about the board's annual agenda.
well, it's historically what we've done is included calendars, the policy governance calendar, the meeting calendar, all of the administrative part of planning as part of what we know that we have on our plate for the year. Budgeting is a part of that because if we're going to have somebody come in, if we're going to do some group professional development like we've done this year with the equity training and with Aaron, all of that needs to be factored in to the big overall.
I think that's kind of exactly what my question was. And I was thinking that as I was reading 2.2, and I know a lot of our retreat time has been taken up with the state mandated training that we're doing, but it highlights the ideas such as presentations by futurist demographers, advocate groups, et cetera. And I think maybe some of that's maybe on the back burner because of what else is going on. But if that's all being laid out between retreat and the end of October, does that give you enough time to plan a year, or all of us really? I mean, not just pointing at you, but does it give everybody a time to line stuff like that up? I think I just think if we move that up to August, we're maybe boxing ourselves in a tiny bit.
I just threw it out there as a conversation starter. You throw a fireball into the middle of the room and then you back up.
Maybe we can leave it alone. That gives us, if you say the last day of October, we've laid out our calendar for board. We've laid out the calendar for what reports we're going to receive throughout the year. We've laid out the calendar for our training. So if that's all done by October, then maybe that's why it's set up that way. It's okay.
Could be. I'm
You can
not,
give it some more thought and respond to the Survey Monkey. You have 2 days to think about it. Respond to the survey, and we can go from there. As for the rest of it, I don't see a problem with it or any concerns. Does anybody else? Okay, so we'll have 4 Survey Monkeys out, and you'll have a little homework before Thursday. Is there a need for executive session this evening?
There is not a need for executive session.
Any other questions, comments, observations by the board? Okay. Mr. Green.
I have one couple short comments. I did fail to notify the board that we had Jake was not here this evening, nor Dr. Rodriguez. So they were addressing staffing, and because of the quick change from yesterday, were excused from the board meeting. And then I did want to notify the board that we did look into the proposal around the floor for approval, which was previously $200,000. And you've asked for a policy to come forward, and that is being compiled. So it is not prepared yet. But bid law does require that anything greater than $350,000 automatically be brought to the board. So that would continue. And after a conversation with Jake and with Bob, the proposal coming forward will be to lift that limit from $200,000 to $500,000. So you can expect information in a formal form coming forward, but I wanted to notify you of that bid of $350,000 would continue to come forward,
right,
according to bid law, and then the other proposal of elevating it from $200,000 to $500,000.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you so much for your time and effort and contributions. This meeting's adjourned.